today in such great numbers, and we did achieve what we set out to achieve. We circled the whole terrace arm in arm. Many of the candidates did sign that pledge, and we are depending on that pledge. We are depending on that pledge to be delivered on. So I want you to be very vigilant over the next few weeks as this campaign comes to a crisis. Here in front of me is a photograph taken in 1938 of the GPO garrison, and these are the people that give us the right to fly these flags that are in the audience today. I would now like, on behalf of the campaign, to welcome to the podium James Connolly Heron, great-grandson of the great James Connolly.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you everybody for attending today. You showed by your attendance today that the proposed destruction and demolition of this, the most historic site in modern Irish history, is not going to happen on our watch. Each and every one of these houses behind us bear witness to history. Each and every one of these houses were occupied by the volunteers on evacuation, the GPO. Each and every one of these houses became the last headquarters of the provisional government of the Irish Republic in 1916, and we will not see them be demolished, and we will not see the destruction rain down on them by a private property developer bailed out through NAMA funding. This campaign is now a decade old, a decade-long campaign to protect and preserve the national monument and the terrace of houses that comprise the last headquarters of the 1916 provisional government. No one generation has a right to give away these houses. No one generation has a right to decide that these houses are a commercial entity to be flogged off to the highest bidder. These are our houses of history. We are the inheritors of these houses, and they will not be given away on our watch. So let the message be clear. Let the message that was sent out 10 years ago when the planners stood by and allowed a planning application be put in to destroy this entire area. Let the message go out again today. You failed in your duty to protect the public interest then. On board Penola, you failed in your public duty to protect the public interest at the board Penola hearing. The Minister has failed in his public duty to protect and preserve this entire site by giving consent to the developer to restore 4 buildings while he levels everything around them. That is not acceptable. The only development that we'll accept in this area is a development that takes cognizance of everything around these 4 buildings. And if you're prepared to spend public money to restore the buildings, and if you've expended public money to date on a planning application that will restore the buildings, that per se is acceptable to us. What is not acceptable to us is that if you are prepared to extend public money to a developer who's going to obliterate the entire area around 4 buildings. That is not acceptable, and that will not happen as long as we stand on this street. As Frank has already alluded to, we stand at a time of crisis in relation to the preservation of this area. There's an election coming up, a local election that's of huge importance. Dublin City Council still have tremendous control in the future of this site and what's going to happen down here. They still own, in our name, 24 and 25, the last 2 houses on this terrace. They should not be handed over to any developer who has a plan to demolish the area around these 4 buildings behind us. And that message must be made very clear. And if a candidate knocks on your door, you have a simple question to ask of him. Where do you stand on the preservation of what the National Museum described as the most important historic site in modern Irish history? Do you stand with us to save this area for future generations, or do you stand with on the basis of the private commercial interests of a property developer now under the control of NAMA? And that property developer has had under his ownership and control the 4 buildings of the National Monument on this terrace for the last almost 10 years or so. And they are lying derelict and in decay, and they're lying derelict and in decay because of the negligence of that private property developer. What has he been doing in relation to the terrace that's of such historic importance? Why didn't he carry out his duty under the planning regulations to ensure that these buildings didn't fall into dereliction and decay? In his own report to the Minister, the developer himself admits that these buildings are derelict, and yet he expects the state through NAMA funding to fund up the restoration of the buildings. An absolute disgrace. This is the greatest planning scandal since the lamentable failure to protect Wood Quay. And let this message go out from our street today. That one Wood Quay is quite enough in one generation. We lost Wood Quay. We have no intention of losing the most historic battlefield site in modern Irish history. So say the National Museum. So say the National Museum, the experts in the area. So we have one arm of the state through NAMA about to demolish with your money, with public money, the battlefield site that another arm of the state, the National Museum say is the most important site in modern Irish history. And to what extent down the road are NAMA going to use your money to protect and defend what is the indefensible destruction of this area? How long more are we going to watch NAMA millions? 5 million they're setting aside to restore these buildings. 5 million of public monies. We could set up a volunteer force of workers who would do that work for nothing.